Today we're going to discuss 5 elements that you need to include every day in your practice sessions to improve as an improvising saxophonist. These 5 elements are sound, technique, transcription, repertoire, and 12 key tunes. By addressing each of these in your practice, you will find that you will swiftly improve and achieve your goals as an improvising saxophonist. Let's get started. The first category of any practice regimen, for improvisation or not, for any saxophone player, is going to be sound. We want to make sure that the saxophone is sounding beautiful, that the saxophone is being heard and being present and expressing joy or tragedy or whatever we're trying to express. So the ability to get a full breath of air, and it's all about air. Get it deep into the diaphragm and project a sound that's meaningful and controlled is the highest priority. So first thing we're looking for is a nice big G. When we get that G, we know that we've got the maximum amount of air, that all our air is being used efficiently. In other words, every bit of air I push through makes the volume louder, makes the sound bigger. A lot of times, if our setup isn't right, or our embouchure isn't right, or our breathing isn't right, pushing more air just makes it sound overblown. So that's step one. And there's lots of things that we do to strengthen our ability to take in air, our ability to push out air, and our ability to control the speed at which the air travels. So among these are several long tone exercises, and I have an exercise I like to do called the vacuum cleaner. And just to give you a glimpse of what that sounds like, it's where we play maybe a high B, B flat, A, G sharp, then we go chromatically back up. So I'll play these 3 notes. Now, using only the muscles in my throat and my tongue position, I'm going to change the pitch by just holding the B, but try to get those same 4 pitches to sound. That's a really important one for developing air, for developing control, and developing ability to play in tune. And of course, ability to inflect in an authentic manner. Our second category is technique. We call it technique. I call it technique and scales sometimes. So this is where we really get our fingers moving. We learn to get around the horn with a lot of efficiency. One of the main things is scales. Major scales. I like to practice melodic minor scales. I practice chromatic scales, of course, some diminished scales, some pentatonic scales, a few other things we do with scales, and there's lots of different exercises from a very simple playing a major scale in groups of 3. Now, I like to do all scale exercises full range. It's really important. With most method books, they have scales written out. They're usually just written out in 2 octaves, and they don't go down to low B flat or up to high F unless it's convenient in the scale. So I think that's a real problem with a lot of method books. Scales to me need to be practiced full range because we need to spend at least as much time working on the palm keys and the spatula keys as we do in the middle of the horn. Otherwise, we're just going to get fast in the middle of the horn and we'll get hung up anytime we get to the extremes of the instrument. So full range is really important. We can also take some jazz patterns and phrases that we hear a lot of great musicians play and make exercises out of them. So for instance, I hear a lot of jazz musicians play this. What I like to do is to take that little phrase and turn it into a full scale exercise. So maybe we'll start in an ascending direction. top and all the way to the bottom, and that's a real fascinating study in chromaticism and alternate fingerings and all sorts of things. So that's a very advanced pattern that we might get into. The next thing in this area of technique is to practice actual phrases that you might use in your improvisations. So we take the language from Charlie Parker and Sonny Stitt. Some people call them licks or riffs or quotes. But we take these little ideas and then maybe we'll move it up in half steps. And so on, until we can play them fluently around the keys. And of course we do a lot of very detailed work with these licks. We don't just run them through, we play them very slowly. We play them with even eighth notes to get our fingers really coordinated with no articulation. Make sure our fingers are doing all the work. And then we add articulation very slowly and very purposefully. So that's the area of technique. The third area is transcription. Now, transcription is arguably the most important aspect of learning to play in an authentic style. We want to listen and hear the music. It's an oral tradition. Just copying licks out of books is not going to get it done. We really need to hear the masters. So you pick your favorite players and we learn the way they execute a melody and we learn their solos. There's lots of ways to do it. We can write it out. We can learn it by rote. There's several different ways that we can approach transcription. When my students are doing transcription, and when I'm doing transcription, I like to have two different approaches every day. So one is a solo I'm working on, whether I'm writing it out, or I'm memorizing it, or I'm learning to sing it, or I'm doing something to familiarize myself with a solo I don't already know. The second part is to learn the solo, learn another solo very well. In other words, memorize it. Learn all the articulations and all the tiny little details. So we could play, something by Lester Young. And try to get every nuance, every little bit of vibrato, inflection, the swing feel, and we try to play right along with it in perfect unison. So those are two areas of transcription, and there's a lot more than that, even so much as to go into the transcription, find parts that you like, and this overlaps with the technique area where we'll take a phrase and learn it in 12 keys from one of our transcriptions. All right, the fourth area is repertoire. By repertoire, of course, we mean tunes. We're learning tunes, and as jazz musicians that want to work, that want to sit in, it's really important to memorize tunes. And we start with the melody. The melody is very overlooked, and it's really important that we get inside the melody. When I was younger, there were no play-along records, so I used to make my own play-along tapes by recording myself playing the melody over and over. So I would then practice a solo against the backdrop of the melody. In other words, the melody was keeping the form for me. That's a really healthy exercise to do. So if you want to try that, record yourself playing the melody. For one thing, the first benefit is learning to play the melody so well that you can play it 4 times in a row without a mistake. Once you can do that, then try practicing against that and improvising. Maybe playing the melody with yourself, but embellishing it. So melody, really important. Obviously the most important part of playing a tune. And then next we want to examine the chord changes. We want to get very comfortable with the arpeggios. We want to work the arpeggios up and down, starting on the 3rd, starting on the 5th, starting on the 7th. And then start to use some of our techniques that we studied in the technique area. So we want to add licks, add phrases that we can now execute, and we're learning to activate the memory of those licks. A lot of people worked on licks in 12 keys, but then they never come out when they're playing. So it's really important that when you're practicing a new tune, that you try adding some of your language on purpose. And that way it starts to become more natural and it's easier to access when we're really improvising and we hear that phrase. The other part of repertoire is to kind of cultivate our list of tunes. So having a good tune list, knowing what are the tunes we know, what are the tunes we're learning, what are the tunes that need review, and what are the tunes that you'd like to learn. Now the fifth area I call 12-key tune learning. And when we learn a tune, well, we start with the blues. Blues, most people learn it in B flat and F. Maybe they'll learn a melody in each of those keys. What I like to do is to get some melodies and get our language that we use in B flat and F and expand it so that we can play a solo in C, or we can play a solo in D flat, or we can play a solo in G, and really work through all the different keys, getting very comfortable in playing the blues in 12 keys. And then from there we move on to something like rhythm changes and Cherokee, and there's lots of tunes that are traditionally played in 12 keys. A tune like The Song Is You is one that musicians like to play in 12 keys. So these are really great workouts, and by making ourselves play them in all keys, we really get all that technique and language and repertoire to be really accessible so that we can play it in any situation. This is the time when we're really practicing improvising. We're really going on long practice periods of just improvising over a blues in A flat. And we just keep going through it and find new things and apply the language that we know and hear other melodies with it. And each key starts to inform the other keys. This is also the area where we work on rhythmic ideas, doing different things with the metronome to simulate the polyrhythm that you're going to encounter when you play with great drummers. These are really important aspects. And of course, when we play tunes like Cherokee, we like to play them quickly. This is the time for us to work out and really play fast and do some hard metronome work. So these are some ways that you can organize your practice schedule if you do these 5 things, which are again sound, technique, transcription, repertoire, and 12 key tunes. You'll find that you really have a wide experience of improvisation and will make progress towards your goals. Happy practicing. I hope you get something out of this. If you do, please let me know in the comments section below. Love to hear from you, and hit the subscribe button. Thanks a lot.